This is David Gibson. I'm the director of Fordham's Center on Religion and Culture. And here in this time of pandemic, we're going to try and do a few different things to provide content to our audience, including some short video interviews that we can put out online. And the first one we want to do is with a friend of the center and a friend of Fordham, Father Paddy Gilger, a Jesuit, young Jesuit, who's the culture editor at American Magazine, the national Jesuit weekly based in Manhattan. But Paddy is currently in Milan. Is it, Paddy?
That's right.
And he arrived there in what is now the hot zone, but he arrived just before the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic hit. And of course, Italy has been, well, really is the epicenter of this pandemic now. Just the day before we were speaking, Italy surpassed China, where the virus originated, surpassed China in the number of deaths. I believe there are over 3,400 deaths now in Italy, and much of the country is in a lockdown. Paddy, what's it like? Where are you speaking from right now?
Yeah, I'm speaking to you. It's really good to be with you, David, even though we're over a long distance. I am in Milan, as you mentioned, and I'm currently staying at our high school here in Milan. It's just northwest of downtown. It's called Leo the 13th, Leone Tredicismo.
And you went over as part of your research for your doctorate in sociology at the new school. What was that project? What was your original intent going
Yeah, exactly. I came not intending to be at the center of a global pandemic, but instead to try to do some research with a handful of the church's ecclesial movements, we're called. So one of them that I'm studying, Communion and Liberation, was born here in Milan and still kind of finds its center in Milan. And so I wanted to spend some time with the people from this movement, as well as with people from the Focolare and from San Egidio, which are in Rome and Florence. So that was my hope, in addition to studying a little bit of Italian, learning a little bit of Italian, which you know much better than I do. But it's been a good experience to learn.
But how quickly did things start looking grim after you arrived? It was just a matter of weeks, wasn't it?
Yeah. I've only been here for about 3 weeks or so. I left the States, in fact, pretty much the day after we had news that the epidemic was quite serious in Italy. So there hadn't been a travel ban at all yet, but there was a warning or advisory. And so I read the news like everybody else was reading the news. I was reading the Washington Post and reading the Times and trying to take a look at what was happening, and whether it would still be a good idea for me to go. But I kind of thought to myself, I've been planning this for a long time. Even if it's serious there, I have very good health care and I'll be well taken care of. And hopefully it will be something that will be not overly serious and will pass in a relatively short order. The first couple weeks I was here, those hopes seemed to be realized as the quarantine was real. There were lockdowns of major events, sporting events had been canceled, the soccer games, schools had been canceled. So when I arrived here at our high school, there were no students. It was like 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and school had been canceled all around Italy. So those things had already been canceled. The major groups had been canceled, but I was able to go out and do a lot of things. So the museums were closed, but I still went and visited, really as a pilgrim, almost more than a tourist, or I hope more a pilgrim than a tourist, to go visit a few of the churches. I got to see the Basilica of St. Ambrose and of course the Duomo and other things like that, and to walk the city a little bit. And people were out and being careful, it seemed to me, but it also didn't seem like the city was in a panic, which felt good. So there was calm, but also some gravity, I think, to the situation. And then 2 weeks after I arrived, which was about a week and a half ago now, the president of the country, initially first the governor of the state of Lombardy here in the north of Italy, and then the president of the country very quickly afterwards initiated a much more serious quarantine, asking people to stay in their houses and not go out except for emergencies. So we've been living under that for the last week and a half, which it seems many places in the United States are quickly coming to the same realization. California has just made a very similar resolution there, it seems so.
So what's the atmosphere now? How would you describe it?
Yeah, you know, I wish I could answer that question better than I can. And the reason is pretty self-explanatory. It's because none of us are leaving our houses, right? The only people who have a sense of what the atmosphere out is in public are those who are going in public, and we ought not be doing that. So it's a little strange. I mean, the people that I'm around here at the high school, there are 4 other Jesuits who were staying here at the time, and there are 2 other lay people, a young layman and a young lay woman, who are wonderful people living here in the community with us. And so we've been enjoying one another's company sporadically throughout this time. But that, I don't know if it gives me a real sense of either the kind of daily drudgery maybe of people who are families who are stuck at home with their children and trying to do homeschooling and these kinds of things, or of people who feel very isolated perhaps and can't go to church or can't go to, you know, to the bar and have a cup of coffee or something like that. So those things are really difficult in some ways to get a grip on. I mean, out my window, I can see, I have these beautiful windows. I can look off to the north on a clear day and see just the tips of the Alps. And then to the south, I can see just the tip of the Duomo, the Madonnina, there on the tip of the Duomo. So incredible, but there aren't very many people at all. Every now and then we'll see like a runner in you know, orange or yellow running gear going by all by themselves. And a car will go by taking somebody to work, which is permissible and whatnot. But
and at the same time, I mean, it just seems so odd. It's so particularly odd. It's Italy, where life, you know, I live there, you're there. It's life is in the street, and every, you know, physical, social distancing is the most un-Italian thing possible. And
that's right.
Out in the streets, living in the streets, and yet it sounds like this kind of ghost town. Also, at the same time, I mean, you've got this terrible suffering going on out there. I mean, these stories in Bergamo, also up there in town in northern Italy, really been hit. 13 priests, I think, have died of the coronavirus, as well as, you know, obviously hundreds of other people. And you've got, I mean, the coffins, the churches are storing coffins until you can even have funerals, which have been effectively banned.
Yes, I mean, those stories are very real, and they are impinging upon our reality at the moment. I mean, the strangeness of it, I think, is twofold. One is that the normal way this would hit our hearts, you know, or reshape our minds is by our seeing it. Even seeing pictures of it, I think, would make a little bit of an impact, or much more of an impact. But as you know as well as I do, even photos are much more difficult to come by. Not impossible, but much more difficult to come by, to grab our attention, the attention of our hearts, to help us understand and to feel with, have compassion for some of what's happening out there. So in some ways, it's like we're removed by only hearing the words about it that we may hear. And that's a little bit of a strangeness, you know, that we're removed from this reality. The other thing that I think is relevant is that even in the midst of this incredibly serious situation, a lot that we can lament and mourn, those stories, not per se, right? But if those deaths happened because the priests were being responsive to people's needs, responsibly responsive to people's needs, and then especially, this is certainly true of the fact that there are many coffins or bodies being housed in churches these days, it actually strikes me as something that we ought to be proud of, rather than solely sad for. Of course, we're sad that we cannot process these things in a normal way by seeing them visually. Of course, we're sad that we can't continue to bury the dead, right, as the works of mercy would have us do. But where else would we rather have the remains of these human souls but in these sacred spaces, the places that have been blessed by our communities over, I mean, especially here in Italy, centuries. So it seems incredibly appropriate to me too, even though it's abnormal and confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking back to your what you said earlier and about the holy places that you were able to go visit early on with the, just one second, let me start again. Stella, just one second, I'm recording something. Let me just, sorry about that. I was just thinking about the, what you mentioned earlier on about the holy places you were able to go visit. And I saw on Twitter the pictures you posted of the Church of St. Ambrose, for example. And this is a city that has seen, you know, so many pandemics and so many plagues and so many catastrophes like this over the time, and has sort of built up its traditions and its Catholic culture, even if not its Catholic observance over those, based on that kind of very painful history. Do you have any sense of, it's early to say this, and again, you know, you're talking about so much of this is out of sight, if not out of mind, but any sense of what impact this might have on Italy and for the church coming out of this pandemic, if and when we ever do come out of it?
We will. I mean, this will fade the same way pandemics have occurred and faded. We will come out of this the same way we have come out. The question of how is the interesting and the really difficult one. So let me say about the little that I understand of the Italian context. Maybe try to say a few words about for the way the church might emerge from it in Italy. So the history first. I do not pretend to know the history of Milan or the history of Italy as well as many others, but the experience here has been kind of beautifully distinct from my experience as a, you know, Irish, German, American Catholic, that kind of thing. It's a very different thing. Like, Italy is a new place for me, and it's not a place where I'm, I mean, I speak with my hands, I'm a very tactile person, but this is a new thing for me. One of the things that has really struck me is the comfortability that at least has been present historically, if not in the present moment, with regard to death and suffering in the Italian church. So two quick examples of that. One of the things that I was dead set on wanting to do when I came was to go to the Basilica of St. Ambrose. So after going to the Duomo, that is the first place that I went. And it was because I wanted to see Ambrose's body. And that's one of those things that, you know, as Catholics, we know about. Like, have these physical in different places. We go to these places, venerate them. Often we have relics in our altars, that kind of stuff. But in the United States, it's not particularly common to have preserved the bodies of our saints in these holy places. At least it's not very common to my knowledge. And so when I went to the Basilica of St. Ambrose, I walked around the outside and took my time, and then went interior and kind of just walked from place to place, seeing the different side altars and the things that were there before making my way back around the backside of the altar into a small crypt that's there. And you can sit in this little hole that is kind of underneath where the choir loft would be. You know, it's underneath the ground. And you look just directly underneath the main altar. And underneath it, there are three bodies, two of martyrs and one of St. Ambrose. It's his physical form that's there, fully vested in his archbishop's regalia. And I was stunned. And he's not covered in some wax mask that tries to put on a facade of life. It's his skull that is there. And yes, his hands and feet are covered with gloves and with slippers. And yes, there's a royal crown on his head, right? But this is his actual skeleton that's standing right there. And I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know what to feel or to think about this. It seemed so strange to me in a lot of ways. But there was, at least this struck me immediately. Death is not something to fear. It's right here. It's right here in the midst of this incredibly sacred space. Death is right here and present with us. And we celebrate the body of this holy person helps us to celebrate the memory of the Mass, which continues to bring life, and the living people who are there. You know, it's like the great saying that the church continues both before and after we have been born into it. And those who are dead are still part of the body of Christ. So that kind of thing. Second quick story is I went to visit something that was even more astounding, a church that was even more astounding, a little side chapel in the church of San Bernardino alla Astua. And it's a little side chapel, the walls of which are completely decorated in the bones of people who had been buried in a former graveyard next door. And there are hundreds of skulls, the segments of our spine. There are femurs along the walls. On the cornices of the chapel, there's the letter M is formed for Mary, but they're formed out of arm and leg bones. And it's absolutely stunning, and one of the strangest and most morbid, but also most hopeful things I've ever seen. And I think the part that makes it hopeful is this: not too much longer after the chapel was decorated in this way, and it was decorated this way in the 17th century, early in the 17th century. Not too much longer after that, there was painted on the ceiling a picture of the ascension into heaven. And so you can see the clouds parting and the angelic hosts. And then even more beautifully, there are pictures of angels or of saints reaching down so that they are almost grasping the bones of the people who are on the walls and lifting them up into the heavenly court. And this image of these actual human bones that are used as decoration, not to promote morbidity, but to help us understand that this will also be us, memorare mortis, frater, but also that we too can hope to be lifted up into the heavenly choir. And that's an incredible thing. So that atmosphere permeates the city here. The memory of death as something other than an enemy.
And
that is very un-American and beautifully un-American.
Exactly. And yet I can imagine a month ago, or a little more than a month ago, people might have been taking selfies in front of it or
and they were
viewing.
I was there. Right then when I was there. And it was a strange experience, right? This strange balance that we've all had of being both a combination pilgrim and tourist, where I wanted to capture this for myself and for others who will never be there to see it. And at the same time, I felt very strange taking a picture of the walls. Or for example, when I went to the Basilica of St. Ambrose, I took, a half dozen pictures of different things that I wanted to capture, but I couldn't bring myself to take a picture of Ambrose's body. And I'm still not entirely sure why. I just couldn't do it. It was too sacred. It was too important. And this is an incredibly amazing figure in the history of the church, and someone who's amazingly important for me. And I couldn't bring myself to do it. So there was I think a nice sense of reverence there.
And then maybe that balance is shifting from things that were just tourist attractions, once were sites of pilgrimage, became tourist attractions, are now becoming, as you say, the memento mori, a site of true pilgrimage due to this whole pandemic. Is there one thing, Paddy, that you do, and I'm asking this of everybody, is there one thing during this time that you do that helps you get through the day, a daily practice, a daily ritual, anything?
Let me say one other thing first, and then I want to come back to that. There are lots of ways, I think, to understand what the coronavirus is doing to us, the distance it's placing between us that is painful, but may also be beautiful, and the challenges that we are having with this. All of those things are difficult for us to understand, but possibly powerful. But one of the things I think it has the chance to do is to remove from our lives the habits we've gotten into, the things we've become accustomed to using to cover over the question of whether or not we are doing the things that are most meaningful in our lives. So often, like the normal things of our days, it's not that they're bad. They're not bad. It's just that we do them often in order to put a mask on the question of whether or not our lives are deeply meaningful, or whether or not what we are engaged in is actually what God would have us be engaged in. And we just avoid the question. We just slip away from it one way or another way or another way. We have a million tactics for slipping away from it. I know I do for sure too, ranging from, I'll just have another call with somebody to, video games, or I'll study another book or whatever it may be. This is taking away some of our techniques. And that can be a really beautiful and a powerful thing, because what it can allow God to do is to reveal to us the restlessness of our hearts that is always already there. It's just that we've kind of packed it down a little bit. Now, it's a very uncomfortable thing. So one of the things that I have been trying to do these days in moments of boredom, that would have been filled with work or with play or with friendship or whatever it is to allow that restlessness just to be present and to present it to God as the question. Am I responding in the way you would have me respond to this restless heart you have given to all of your sons and daughters? Help me to understand whether or not I'm actually giving my life on a normal basis in the way that you would have me give it. What is it that I truly want? The desires you've deeply placed in my heart and in my mind and my body. So instead of allowing those things just to be masked over, we can see them come to light a little bit. In some ways, I know this is a little, Pollyannish maybe, or it's a little too saccharine a read, but I think there is a way that we can take the coronavirus as some kind of common Lenten penance that refuses to allow us to settle back into the de rigueur habits of our lives.
I mean, it goes back to that idea that you're a priest, you're over there supposed to be doing academic work, which I'm sure this is impeding, and I don't know how that's going to go. But you're also there, you're a priest who's to celebrate Mass with the people and get to know the people, and you're there. What do you do? Celebrate Mass with the few people in the high school?
Yep, exactly.
I mean, it's again, what you were talking about, trying to find God's purpose in all of this for you in particular, seems like a powerful
yeah
thing.
I do not take it for granted that because I am ordained or because I'm living in a religious household that the sacraments are available to me in a way they would not be to most people, like yourself included, David. And it's neither fair nor justified. It's not. But neither are our lives. That way, our lives are neither fair nor justified for the most part. All I think that we have any right to is to receive the things that we are given and try to receive them well and with some sense of grace. So what I've been doing is we have Mass here in the evening in our tiny little chapel, which is just behind me on the other side of the wall, with the members of the community. And sometimes people come when they're able, and other times I have meetings which are conflicting and etc. But usually just 4 or 5 of us are there, and we pray the Mass in Italian, and I stumble my way through and try to be grateful for the presence of the Lord in the Eucharist there. I have been really doing my best to try to take people who I know are not able to celebrate in the way that they usually would with me in my prayer at the Masses. So to try to offer that in some ways, it's not sufficient, but it's something.
Oh, it's a very extremely poignant and passionate in all those words of suffering kind of experience. It seems that you're going through. How much longer are you supposed to be there? What was the original plan?
My hope was to be in Italy until the end of May, and I may have to be in Italy until the end of May. So we will see what's going to end up happening. The quarantine at the moment is set to end on April 3rd, but that probably will not happen. It will probably be extended at least another week and maybe 2 more weeks. I had hoped to go to Florence right around that time to visit with the Focolare there in Lopiano, in their little town just outside of Florence, and then to go to Rome for most of the month of May. I have some hope that I'll still be able to do some of that, but if not, I actually feel okay about it. You know, the Lord will have to provide what I am missing from what research I could have done. And I have to do a lot of trusting in that, but.
Well, it's not the experience you anticipated, but it's much more than that in so many ways.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of the things that, so just to maybe offer this, is that the group Communion and Liberation that I was here to study, one of the things that has been on my mind, because I've been thinking about them in this place, even though I haven't been able to meet with them, is they have a phrase that they use in English. They always are trying to ask themselves the question, how is reality for me? How is this thing in front of me for me, meant for me? Can it be for me? And they ask this of beautiful things, which in case the answers in those cases are incredibly easy to give and joyful and consoling. And they ask it in really difficult and very challenging circumstances. How is this very painful thing for me? And so I've been trying to, learn from them a little bit in these days by asking, how is this thing that I never would have wanted, that none of us ever would have wanted? How is this also for us? How is God present there for us? And we have answers. They may not be the answers that we wanted or the answers that I wanted, but we do actually have answers. And I think some of those answers actually come in frustration. And the only response then is to offer even that frustration to the Lord. So in my own prayer, I'll sit on my bed just over here and look out the window in the morning sometimes at a city that I cannot touch and just say to the Lord, I'm very frustrated that it's right here and I cannot touch it, and I'm really angry. And the Lord receives my anger with real gentleness and accepts me in that. And I think that there's something in that, the for me-ness of even this frustration, that even this limitation can be for me because the Lord is still present there. So I try to learn from each of these movements I've been studying, and sometimes we succeed and sometimes we fail, but this seems to be a moment of unique learning.
Paddy Gilger, thanks so much. We appreciate you spending the time with us. Paddy Gilger, Jesuit priest, culture editor at America magazine, currently in Milan, pursuing his research, hopefully, into his doctorate in sociology at the New School. Paddy, thanks for joining us. Pray for us as we'll pray for you.
David, you're wonderful. Great to be here.